Yes. Yeah, if we can go live now.
There we are. Tell me what it means that we applied for. It's like a little vouchers that we get.
I don't know the detail. I'll see when we had an online meeting.
All right, but it's got the red thing there.
Yes, because I said that would be great. We can tidy it all up and place it at standard maybe.
Right, if we can move on with the meeting, thank you. Chair's opening remarks. Just to say that a number of us had a meeting by the toll bridge to discuss in situ various, just to get a feel for what was going on and to discuss it informally. And I think it went very well. It was very positive. It came up with ideas and also got a little bit firmer on what might work and what we can actually sort of possibly push forward. What I think was useful is having that and potentially then maybe actually pressing Sir Roger to come and join us, having the same discussion, and I think it will actually sort of have, it will work its way up the hierarchy, so to speak, as to what is practical and what could work. But if we consider actually, I think we talk about the toll bridge later on the action and project log, so we'll go on with that. Otherwise, let's move on with the meeting. Can we have apologies for absence received? I believe that was.
Apologies from Councillor Tommins.
Thank you.
And we've had apologies from Councillor Paul Hutter. He's been delayed in transport, so may not come.
Right. Okay. Declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disposable pecuniary interests from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. No. So minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee. To receive the minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee held on Wednesday the 15th of January 2025, and to consider any matters arising from those minutes not covered elsewhere in this agenda. Decision.
Yes, thank you. Item 0324, which is the long-running saga of the level process. Chloe's been in contact with Network Rail. I've written twice to Mr. Knighton of Network Rail. He's also on the Community Rail Partnership, but he wasn't there on that Zoom meeting this week. However, I've written to him on the 25th of February and the 13th of March. I'm not getting very far, and we know that Chloe's not been getting very far. He says he'll give us a definite reply next week. This was the request to get some people who could give us an authoritative update as to what they would do in the future if all the level crossings went down at the same time. And I get the impression that he's hoping that some kind of written thing would be all we require. I think we want a little bit more than that. So I'll wait for a week. If I haven't had a reply in a week, with the agreement of this committee, I will take this to far more senior management with Network. We should go up to chief executive level. I think it's being a bit disrespectful there.
I think we can agree that it's we can ask you to.
Yeah, well, Chloe and I will let liaise on it out on official paper and everything else like that. Okay.
Should we vote on that, or can we just accept the vote?
I think it's an ongoing.
It's not there. Yes.
Okay.
We'll do that. And anything else on the minutes? I can see we didn't put out the so we have to rely on hands. Do we have somebody to second? And so Councillor Stuker for proposing and Councillor Ripley for seconding. And if we can just show of hands to accept. That's unanimous. Thank you. We can go on to review of action and project log. We can go with members to review to consider Heritage and Townscape action and project log. Through this, I'll go through this fairly quickly. Members consider the report from the Sandwich Environment Conservation Group. Now, I think Lynn, you mentioned that we need to look a bit more carefully at the tree planting scheme as proposed by Nicky Warden. Now, this has been sort of slipped a little bit, whether we can turn this into an...
Perhaps we could put this on as an agenda item for the next meeting, because the tree warden has done a very comprehensive report on this, and it's just been sitting there with no action taken for quite a while, and we need to look at it properly and, do something about it.
I think that's a good idea. So, is there anything else we want to add at this point? Bearing in mind it's going to come as an agenda item.
If we're going to put it on for next or another meeting, should be circulated with copies of them.
Yeah. So I believe I've got a copy of the report. All right. So yes, I'll look that up and I'll circulate it. If I put it through to Chloe.
Yeah. Would you like it prior to the agenda? So sort of
ASAP.
send it out? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
as soon as you get it, we can circulate it. And Councillor.
So a broader point that it links into this action is that we won't meet again now for 2 months, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Assuming the dates within the new dates for next year will be published. Should have got those dates yet. And we've certainly got the STC dates, we've got committee dates as well, okay. Sorry. The business plan that's been drafted is going to STC next Monday.
Yeah.
One of the priority items within the plan is tackling the climate emergency. It was a council decision possibly back 21, at least a couple of years ago, certainly pre this administration. Nothing was done towards the end of the last administration, nor have we done anything up to this point, but it is in the business plan. So this will be one element of tackling the climate emergency. So what I was going to say was, I think it's an agenda item for the next meeting of this committee to explore how we're going to tackle the response to the climate emergency. And I can bring some thoughts around that because I've worked with Councillor Miles in terms of getting it into the business plan, assuming the business plan is signed off.
Yeah.
I think there's a number of things we are doing already, there's a number of things we can consider, and a number of things in train like this that should all form part of our strategy in terms of climate response to the climate emergency.
Yeah. So we can have essentially an agenda item. Climate emergency trees, making it real.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to just talk about it all the time. We want to actually do something.
See,
Councillor Anderson?
What I regard two aspects of that policy should contain a policy about cycling and bike parking. Anything that reduces traffic and motorised traffic in the town, I think would be a good idea. And secondly, but this perhaps goes to finance and general purposes, is about the investment strategy. It would be the Tollbridge Fund Finance Committee, and making certain that our portfolio there conforms with a strategy for dealing with the climate emergency. So those are 2 points that I'd like to be included.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that there are a number of elements of practical things that the property manager is getting on with already in terms of reviewing the assets, and some of those sit within STBF and some within STC that will contribute to our aim towards net zero. So for example, a review of the Guildhall is a really good example of just changing your light bulbs has a significant impact if it doesn't work. But there's a bundle of stuff, back to my point, that's already in train. We need to just capture. You're right, it does cross a number of committees.
And Councillor Blunt?
Just to say, this is not the place to debate at the moment, but as trustee, our obligation is to maximise the funds of the Tollbridge Fund and to start putting restrictions on something which is very dangerous and may be economic by it. So that's all I'm going to say.
I think it's arguable, and I think we need
well-
that discussion.
The discussion needs to be had.
Can I,
Yes.
sorry, can I just ask, is there a business plan or a climate change report? I mean, is it, because I'm not even sure what you're now talking about, so.
So my perspective is that the business plan goes next Monday to STC.
Right,
Within that, there are a number of priority areas to tackle in the next 2 years.
right,
One of those is responding to the climate emergency.
yeah,
It's about having a strategy. So the strategy really, in terms of process, wouldn't be written unless we accept it as one of our priorities.
yeah,
However, it's a given, I think. So the answer to your question is no, there isn't anything written at the
Right.
moment. I've got my own personal views, but I'm sure others will as well. There are a number of really good examples not very far away from here. I engaged with Dealtown officer at a tourism event,
Yes.
Nadine,
Yes.
and I've already arranged I'll sit with her. She is tackling their net zero aim alongside climate emergency. And so they've done a lot. If
They
you look
have
at
done a lot.
the Dealtown website on that particular issue, it's really good.
right. It sounds fantastic, but it does sound like a very large
It's a year's work.
project.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Introducing it next time.
Okay, introduce it.
Right.
Right. We have. Okay, we move on. This is with regard to the plaque at the bottom of the War Memorial, making the words clearer. Do we have any further movement on that?
Yes, so we had a quote, the quote's being amended because there were some things that needed to be amended due to insurances and things, and I'm just waiting for that, but it's definitely still in process, and we're hoping that it will be soon rather than later.
Thank you.
Did we approve the quote, or is it?
No, so the quote will actually hopefully still fall under the town clerk's
Yeah, delegated authority.
See compromise it. Bus shelter. The next one is bus shelter.
National War.
If I could just ask Chloe to update on where she is, and then we can throw it over to the.
And so I know that this was chased by the town clerk, and I have also chased it, but yet I've not had a response.
No response. And Councillor Back.
Well, again, reading the papers tonight for Monday, I see that bus shelters are actually can fall within our jurisdiction. Maybe we ought to just do it and send a bill to them. It's getting ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and we really need to up the level of pushback to DDC and KCC.
Councillor Morehouse in his hand.
Yeah, reference to your report, is there any movement on the finishing the benches?
I've had no
Benches
information or any update
remain
regarding.
unfinished. If you look at benches, they have the same bench style in Canterbury, they're finished. The powder coated gunmetal grade base, so they actually look finished proper. These don't, it's half a job, and it needs.
So I'm in Canterbury tomorrow, so.
You'll see a marked difference between our benches and theirs.
Councillor Chuka and then.
So on back to the bus shelter, so in terms of bus shelters, so I think what Council Wiles has included is the whole list of potential statutory responsibilities of a parish council. However, that bus shelter out there doesn't fall within our jurisdiction, we know that, so
Really?
it's a fair point to make.
It's a fair point, and I will make it.
But the point I was going to make is that the bus shelter is included as a priority item within the highway improvement plan. So we have another device in terms of engaging with KCC, so it's within our top 3, I believe.
I'm a little lost now, because my understanding was that the money that was apparently left over from the Guildhall Forecourt building was supposed to be with you by the very latest last November, and from that you would know how much money you had to deal with the bus shelter and with any more money that was left over to deal with more benches or more seating areas. So first of all, does this mean that DDC have not yet told you how much money they have left? They haven't told you. Well, I do think that needs to be absolutely shot out the wall, because I think they have to tell you what that money is. I mean, it sounds a bit like they lost £30,000 and we only ended up with 15,000 from Southern Water when they were building the park. And that went on for years and years. This is I mean, for residents, this is totally unacceptable. And I think we do have to find a way. I mean, I don't know who we're now dealing with, but there must be someone above whoever we're dealing with to say, all we need to know is how much money we've got. When we know how much money we've got, you can decide what you do with it. But this is, it's your money, it's not their money. And it's giving them interest probably, not you. But I just don't understand it.
Councillor Morehouse and then Councillor Murphy.
There were three other things as well. One was already mentioned, seating. Secondly, the residents. And thirdly, protection for the trees, the railings that like got down at the quay would be perfect.
And some of them on the trees themselves have been strangled now by the fixings that are there and not appropriate in terms of the size the trees are up to now. So it needs to be re-examined.
It needs to take scissors.
So Councillor
My concern is, Carol's absolutely right. My concern is if Sandwich Town Council starts putting money in to start doing these bits and pieces for the square, especially the bus shelter, I do feel that DDC go, and they won't tell you how much money it's got, and they'll take it and they'll run. That's my concern, because STC have put money in to pay for it already. That's my concern. So I do feel that we need to chase DDC and see how much exactly we've got left, so then we can prioritise what needs to be done on the square. Because obviously the benches haven't been painted properly. One of the bins is damaged at the front. That's been bent by a car coming onto the square. Obviously the trees are now being strangled, and they should have had the fencing put around long ago. And also some of the lighting one of the lightings has started to fail on there as well. So it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and Councillor
There's
Morehouse.
one other matter. The historic sign that was up to telling people about the history of the Guildford Forecourt, that now sits in the boiler room, and it's been sitting there for
That's actually come under a new project, so they're actually all being done and reinstalled. So
It doesn't fall within the remit of the forecourts renovation, so there is a separate project. They will be delivering hopefully soon. But there is a story that we followed through on this, in the sense that the project manager did come to our meeting, didn't he? And he made it clear. So it's very easy to construct the story back to DPC and say, why haven't you come back? So, but what I can't remember is the action with this committee, or is it with STC?
I don't know. Can we find out?
I think it's STC.
Yeah, I don't think it's this committee.
No,
it's going higher. But basically, we can find out who's dealing with it, who in DDC is the responsible person, how much money, and when can we have it?
I don't think there's even been a handover yet, has there, for the square? Back to us?
We haven't. Well, there was a sign-off meeting, but sorry, we're all discussing this in the absence of the town clerk and what she might have seen and all of that. But I think we need to actually be documenting the story, rather than if we just go and phone up and say what's happening, we may get half the story, or from the wrong person another story. We need to write formally saying this is what happened, this is the event that occurred with the project manager, this was the promise that was given, and this is where we are now. So we have to map that out so we get a formal response back, because it feels to me like we're just having a friendly chat with somebody, particularly as the project manager moves off at the end of the project onto another role in DDC.
As the clerk is on leave, I mean, we can try and track that story back through minutes at least. Does anybody have a starting point from when those discussions roughly in time?
Well, I sort of can remember that I think the November date was the date that was given because it tied in with the handover of the
So
forecourt.
meeting that
So the starting point, I think it was around May, June time.
Yeah.
Because when the person, I've forgotten his name,
Yeah.
yes, who took up a senior role elsewhere, so he didn't go on to a different project, he's taken up a business as usual role. He came in and he said, we can't do anything for now, we've got to wait until
It's,
end of October.
and that's why November was
Yeah.
stuck in our mind.
It does seem very much to be fobbed off
Mm.
all the time,
Yeah.
doesn't it, by
Yeah.
DDC and just pushed to the back of the queue sort of thing,
I
which
think
is
ultimately
unsatisfactory.
we might ask the mayor to formally write. Would
That would be my
Yes.
suggestion.
So let's go first off finding out where we stand on all of this. As I said, the amount of money, who the current contact is, because it might still be David Parish, it might not be. Any time scale. Anything else? Key points that we need to raise?
So I'm happy to go through the minutes
Yes.
and try and track a timeline.
Yes.
And also look through the emails for the contact and obviously
Yeah.
to be aware that the town clerk is away. So for
Of
that
course,
kind of
yes.
history,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to wait until
Yeah.
I think we should be asking for a detailed explanation of the end point of the project,
Yeah.
rather than just being told there's £46 left in the bank for you. We need to have actually an understanding of what's being allocated, what's available, so it's got to be clearly explained to us as we can examine it.
And I think also, do we actually own it as the council? Do we own it in the sense that we can do stuff in it once it's handed over? What, the liabilities, responsibilities, that
Are you talking, when you say it, do you mean
well,
the
the
forecourt?
forecourt, yes.
No, there's sorry, my understanding is STC owns, leases the forecourt, STBF leases the Guildhall. But so there's an archaic document in terms of this lease, and it's forgetting the legal terms, but it's about there is a particular legal term about where you're both liable.
Jointly and severally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Something along those lines.
That sounds complicated.
It does sound.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I
Yes,
just say
Carol.
one thing? I think we do have to be a bit careful. I'm not a councillor, but I think this is the sort of thing that really winds up our residents, as it would wind me up, and that we need to be mindful that this is an irritation. We've already come through the winter with a bus shelter that was not fit for purpose, especially given the cold winds we've had. We're going to go into the summer with benches that really aren't fit for purpose for people to sit and enjoy it. And all of this is very irritating to the people, residents, who they are looking at what Sandwich Town Council is doing about it. And we appear not to be, I'm not saying we are, but not to be doing
I
very
think it's
much.
important to note that Sandwich Town Council is equally annoyed.
Correct, and that's where I
Yes.
think it needs to be,
Yeah.
it needs to come out.
Yes, we are reflecting the annoyance of the parishioners who.
I think we have to be slightly careful that we don't over-explode this as an issue, because there was a sign-off meeting, STC were representing that, I believe. The equipment is out there. If there's a significant fault, it's easy to say X isn't right or Y isn't good. I'm not convinced that's the case. I think DDC think they've delivered the project.
We
That's
don't.
my view.
But
But if we
Sandwich
don't,
don't.
We're
we're not
snagging.
articulating it
Yes.
very well.
Yeah.
No.
Councillor Morehouse?
Maintenance, who's responsible?
That's
That's
the number
Now,
one question.
there's a very perfect example of this, poor maintenance, is the bridge that links my Road Street, St George's Road. That's closed as a result because that bridge has never been maintained properly.
That's true.
And we'll have the same situation here, and it's unsafe seating. That's a whole new ballgame.
And this is my point, the point of my comment. Who owns it in the sense of liability and, as we say, maintenance and forward. But let's get it handed over properly and snagged. And can we any other comments on this? Okay, we can move on to the rail network rail.
Right,
I'll let you start here.
yeah, I've just been with the update, and I think I think they're just, I could be wrong, but I just think that they're trying to fob us off. They don't want to face the town council, and I'm going to point out to them that the more they do this, the more they're going to get pushback. So the much better thing is to come and explain to us what happened, why it happened, and what they can do as an absolute fallback position, because they won't get all four level crossings working at the same time by hand, but is there something they can do at the most important crossing, whichever one that is? And that's really the emphasis I will put on it, and I'll try to use some of my somewhat out of date technical expertise to ask the questions of them, but we've agreed that we're going to escalate it, but let's wait till next week. He did promise something. I'll wait until next week. If I hear it, fine, and I'll obviously will forward it straight to the members here, and if not, then we'll just escalate it and start waking up hoo-ha.
Right. Anything more on that one? Now, next one is the mowing regime. Councillor Morehouse to explore a mowing regime for Sandwich. But I know that there is a mowing.
Can you tell me which bit we're at? Because
It's
it's
on
not
that
right.
one.
Yes, it's not right.
You've dropped to before around.
Katie's
Ainsley Court.
I think it might-
Ainsley Court.
well, we call out of sequence.
Ainsley Court, the compass, and
Where am I?
what's it called? I've done that one.
I have one wrong here.
It's
My
more
apologies.
confusing.
Yes, I saw Ainsley Court before. We did the bottom plaque. Actions to be showed 10 minutes. Legal status right. Oh, Ainsley Court.
Have we done the bottom of the wall memorial plan?
Yes.
Wonderful. Lovely.
You blinked. It's all been, yes.
It's all in hand,
All in hand.
and the quote's waiting, but it should fall under.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, we'll just
Wonderful.
refer back to Ainsley Court. We actually mentioned Ainsley Court in our following on from visiting the toll bridge, having a look, and basically noting that there's not. We've covered this so much with regard to council that it seems to actually get a ramp there, possibly getting a sponsor of some kind, having a contact in Ainsley Court and dealing with this for those who are interested outside council, because it doesn't seem to be a council thing, and we've tried. So, and Councillor Anderson, I believe you've spoken to Ainsley Court.
Yeah,
Whether we
they're
can-
keen to see it happen, but,
Yes.
but there is no officer support, and and Councillor Green did actually show me sort of off the peg ramps that you can buy, and it just, I find it very frustrating,
Yes.
and I will bring it up again under the agenda item for the disability access.
Yes, yes. If we can leave that until the disability access agenda item, and then discuss this a little bit further, because clearly, actually walking through, and as I said at the very beginning, being able to be on site and experiencing and talking about it as a group, and walking from the toll bridge through, and actually sort of saying, yeah, what you're saying is completely right. That is realistically the only way. We can't drop it. We can't move it. So that I don't miss anything. Compass Rose. Councillor Black, sorry.
Just to say, when I was taking some people down to the Heritage Centre after the tourism networking event, we were invited into Cat's Eye Carvings to see how it's doing. It is really looking absolutely first rate.
Superb.
It is absolutely first rate, and work is progressing. Unfortunately, the lady had, I think, a broken her leg. Or,
Yes. Broken her ankle.
broken her ankle. So she's trying to do this whilst on crutches, but it will look first rate.
Yeah.
It really will look good.
Yeah.
And going on from there, Carrie mentioned that she was looking at installing on the 27th
Yes.
rather than opening on the 27th and of March of this month. And had asked, as a joint request to both myself and Kelly Green, with regard to concealing it pending the formal opening or the formal display of it, and has asked for, and I've suggested either a sort of a blanket arrangement, sort of underlay type, to protect the carving, and then a steel sheet with Harris fencing round, so that it is protected, concealed, but in such a way that we can remove that protection, the Harris fencing, as quickly as possible.
Is there a date for the unveiling?
We don't have a date at the moment.
I was thinking possibly using it as part of the Sandwiches V-Day celebrations, possibly putting it in with that.
That means leaving it concealed throughout April. That might be too long.
That has got,
Sorry, just that John and I were John Landon and I were
Yes.
talking about this yesterday in relation to something else, but we have there's a planter next to the wall, immediately in front, behind the compass rose, that has to be moved. I don't know, I think Lady in Cat's Eyes did say she had a piece of equipment and could go under and move it down, but it has to be moved down so that it sits at the side of the bench there. The reason being is that you need to stand behind it. The compass rose points north, which means you're looking at it across the river. So actually, you've got to have room to get behind it, closer to the wall to look at it. So to do that, you've got to move that flower planter.
I would imagine as it goes in, because we'll have the physical machines to
So
shift these great big lumps of stone.
because we can't forget it, otherwise people won't be able to get the view of it. They'll be thinking it's upside down when it's not.
Anything else on the Compass Rose? No. So we've done the railway. We've covered the tree warden's report, but we're going to mention that that's covered under the climate change, which we're going to have as an agenda item at the next meeting. The mowing regime, if somebody can just comment with regard to where we are with
Yes, the SDCG was going to have a meeting on Monday, but so many of us sent apologies. I had to attend a meeting at the BBC that didn't proceed. So when I next attend the next SDCG meeting, I will ask the question on this.
Yeah, thank you.
yes. So BBC Parks and Open Spaces did respond. So I wrote to them towards the end of last year. They provided a response about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know if you've seen it, Keith, but certainly I shared it with Nikki, and she may have discussed it wider, but she gave me some comments back. In terms of their response to the proposals, if I'm honest, fairly lukewarm, but not shutting the door on options. So I think there's more to be had, and Nikki's suggestion was that we'd have another meeting, the group that involved myself, Lynn and Mark, in terms of and representatives from SCCG with Parks and Open Spaces. So where we are, we've had a response. Nikki's had a look at it. She's provided me comments. I'm going to go back and suggest we have another meeting.
I think we have discussed it informally, is that DEC are rather over-elaborating what is being asked. What's being asked is a more relaxed approach to mowing in certain areas, not some beautiful traditional hay meadow with wildflowers. It's simply not cutting the wildflowers that are growing already. And so there's a kind of a mismatch of what's intended. So hopefully at another meeting it can be explained that we're not demanding great scientifically based approach.
I sort of, when we first met them, I got a sense of, not really interested for possibly very sensible reasons, because, but then go away and tell us what you want, which is what happened, and then it's come back. So they've so when I say lukewarm, actually they've warmed up a bit from their first reaction. So maybe they're moving in the right direction.
Right, thank you. Councillor Morehouse?
So I'm retracting a little bit here. Just a thought on the compass rose. It would be fitting if it was installed prior to us hanging over the speakership of the St. Paul's. It'd be very fitting if we was to have that installed and unveiled during the year of the speakership.
Yeah, the only issue is, of course, it is a DDC project, so that is a sensible suggestion, but that needs to be fed through, because it will be ultimately their call, and they may already have decided who's going to unveil it.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough, they paid for it.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. Well, I mean, it was John Landerdon's baby. It should have gone into the forecourt originally. That's where it was planned for the centre of the forecourt. And he did pursue it, and it's probably a better place actually where it's going to go. But if you are sort of having some sort of unveiling ceremony, I really hope it doesn't get missed out, because and also John Hennessy, who has actually written quite a lot about that on the replacement boards.
Yes, I think in that case we need to make sure that Kelly, who I think is leading it on behalf of DDC, is made aware that the two Johns.
I think she knows, but perhaps we ought to make sure.
Yes, to remind her of that, so that they are not omitted. Thank you. Anything else? Compass Rose before we move on to the next one? This was to do to arrange a pre-meeting at the toll bridge. Well, unfortunately, Sir Roger was not able to attend, but I do believe we should persist, because clearly, for those who were there, it worked. Having that meeting in situ and being able to discuss and seeing the traffic at that time of the day, noting coming from the Thanet direction, coming from Sandwich, the difficulties of crossing the toll bridge, us who are able people, the bus just clipping the side of my arm. Well, not quite, but I can feel the wind. So, and I think actually having Sir Roger there and presenting possible solutions which we've proposed, I think it might get somewhere, because we don't really understand KCC's approach of saying and DDC's approach of saying no, you can't.
Their approach appears to me to be very negative on all fronts, and actually the way we discussed it, there's quite positive ways of dealing with it that are quick, affordable, in fact with very little cost involved, and would solve a lot of the problems. You're never going to solve all the problems, you're never going to please everybody, but this, the way we came up with seemed to be a very sensible way of doing it.
May I just expand on that way?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Claire had it first.
Yes.
Well, I was going to, but I'd like to hear what I'm sorry I missed this meeting, but I've talked to Councillor Green about it at length when he was writing the report. So what conclusion?
Well, the conclusion at the moment is the simplest, being to phase the lights. Just to actually have something, because there are so many options, there are so many possibilities, all of which will come back and say, can't afford it, too complicated. Phasing of the lights is to my mind, almost free.
And that would give pedestrians long enough to get across
That's
the
the
bridge.
idea, yes.
Okay.
And also to change the signage before to avoid the heavier vehicles coming over, including the buses, which could easily access everywhere they want to access via the,
Yes.
I may be wrong, but I remember that the phasing was brought up as a possibility before, and
It might be a firm no, but
As in, I just remembered this, we've had
Yes.
this conversation before, and I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that it
But
came up as well.
I think that we need to emphasise, might be their firm no, but if from us, we're the ones who are here.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor
Can
Robinson.
so I'd like to make the other point that I want. I met with Kelly Green yesterday. It just so happened she wanted to talk to me about the Jubilee Centre, and we talked about, it just came up, the Tilbridge issue. So this morning, I sent her the report because it's in the public domain, and it seems to me, I mean, she was very interested. I think she knew about that there'd been a report, but she hadn't seen it. So I think it's very important to get the officers on board. I think you probably all know Kelly, and she's a great enthusiast. And if you've got her on your side, you're in a good position. And I would hope that there's somebody equivalent at KCC, that we could somehow get on side, because we are basically, as a parish council or town council, a pressure group. That's what we do. And we have to inform the people that we know are our friends and will help us.
Good point. Good point. So, Councillor Murray.
Yeah, so it was a positive meeting. We did notice that the damaged blocks of masonry that was damaged previously has been damaged again. There's been a large red scrape down the side of it. We saw that. I showed everybody. Took some pictures of the signs. Obviously, people know what I do for a living. The signs need to be changed. That's one of the correct things. Currently, it says on one of the signs is a 7.5 tonne limit with the HGV symbol. That means HGVs can't use it, but coaches and buses can. All they need to do is remove that truck sign from it and just have the 7.5 tonne limit in the circle, and everything over 7.5 tonne must not use that bridge. I did suggest that a working group set up for people that are interested in doing it, so we can push this a bit more. And also, as we need to, as I said earlier, about 106 money, whether that can help with us. And if you remember, I don't know, Carol, if you remember, the last annual town meeting last year, we had the KCC members for highways attend, and he gave a length talk about what's been going on. He's been getting a lot of stick lately we've got in the press regarding the roadworks. Roadworks have been terrible, especially for Sandwich. Some of the town main roads have been closed, hence why we're having these problems with buses. I know you took a video this morning of a coach going the wrong way for Barbican.
And I sent an email after the town meeting last year, and the second one, I've never had a response. So
I do believe he was going to come do a site visit.
to the gentleman who said he would, if we sent him something, he'd be there to help. So we haven't had a response. I probably got the note somewhere, but I think the traffic orders that were brought in after the Lorry Watch survey, the reason I think they didn't include the buses was because of stagecoach fuss about the issue of we have to be able to come over there to easily get up the town, especially for the pick up and drop off of children from school.
But if you can quite clearly see, when the high street was closed outside the Bell 2-3 weeks ago, they were doing around the circles. Correct. And I do feel that sometimes stagecoach do hold parishes to account regarding their drop-off pickups.
You make a fuss and they threaten to remove the service until someone offers to pay some sort of subsidy to help that service run, which is a bit of blackmail. Councillor Robinson, we're looking at that, at the phasing, and having a phasing for pedestrians only. We also looked at the original idea of walking across the bridge at the bottom so that you could access via Ainsley Court, which is how we got to the Ainsley Court area, which is what you've discussed before. But the bridge itself, I think what you said was perhaps if there was a working party, we could just outline the 3 or 4 main areas that we thought, and then let someone else decide which one of those was going to.
Can I have Councillor Black?
Just on rerouting the buses, I'll be guided by our professional expert, but I think also I recall there's been a problem at Breezy Corner doing a left turn.
Mm.
It's not a simple solution. I mean, it's caused damage there, both actually at the corner and the building opposite. So it's not, given the size of and length of the buses. Now, Dean, you'll know far better than me, but I think that for a bus driver, because you're coming at it one angle and it's a very sharp angle, and you're on full lock going round, and if you just misjudge it, you're going to be.
They were taken. The buses were taken out of coming down Ash Road and down that.
That's
road
right.
because of the narrowness and of the left turn. And it's totally correct. However, when roads are closed in the town, for instance, Councillor Chukum, when the road was closed outside your road and stuff, all the buses do the loop. They've done that route for the last 2-3 years, Carol.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So they've always done that same route. So I don't see the problem of rerouting the buses instead of sending them over the toll bridge, but they can go back onto the bypass to go up Ash towards Canterbury and up towards Ramsgate.
Okay.
Can we sort of keep it tight on this one? Councillor Morehouse.
Neil Baker was the portfolio.
That's KCC.
I'm sorry, can we just add at the piece about Breezy Corner, because Breezy Corner was dealt with under the town team white paper in 2014 or 15, and it was from then that we managed to get Stagecoach at that point refused if we were going to widen the pavement of Breezy Corner and put bollards in. Stagecoach said that in which case they would not run a service up the Ash Road. However, it was proven that if a bus driver was actually driving correctly, you came along from Breezy Corner, you drove actually into the middle of the road and then you turned left. And so you weren't trying to turn that corner, which is what the buses were doing. You actually go further out and you turn left. And that allowed KCC to build out the pavement on the corner of Breezy Corner and put black bollards there to protect any pedestrian that was there. It took a couple of years because they had to examine what might be under that road because of it being historic buildings all around it. But that it was proven that a double-decker could and does turn up, but they did threaten to remove
That is.
Hold on, can we keep that as a separate, because this is the toll bridge we're talking about.
Well, it is a toll bridge, because you're
It's
talking about routes round.
Yeah. Just to point out, Carol is correct, because when the toll bridge was out of order, when they took it away to be finished, the buses were turning left. And when I was doing rail replacement for Sanders at the time, we were turning left. It's very, very tight, but it's doable. Can I just put a point on, can we put this back on the agenda for the next meeting? For regarding the toll bridge, so we can have so we can start setting up.
What I'm going to suggest is the original point of this was the invitation to Sir Roger Gale. Can we extend? Because I think there are 2 points here. One is to discuss it. The other is actually to have somebody of Sir Roger Gale's stature there with us, potentially invite him at his convenience, because we invited him for our convenience. Can we express an invite, and when he can come, those of us who are free hopefully can attend. Councillor Ripley?
Yeah, just to say, can we set up a working group ASAP then, so that they are up and running by, hopefully by the time our MP can visit us, and set this thing in motion, because otherwise we're just going round and round in circles talking about it all the time. Nothing's actually achieved.
And the working group, who would be? I mean, can I share a show of hands who would wish to be on it?
I don't think it needs an awful lot. All it needs is to sit down and sketch, just jot out the ideas that came today. We can't cost those out, but if you just jot them out, then you've got something to present.
The point about a lot of the ideas we did today, they're very cheap, the cheapest ideas, and actually they would be pretty effective.
Yes.
And as we stated several times, you're not going to please everybody, I think we do, but this is a reasonably cheap, well, it's a very cheap option and can be quickly achieved, whereas a lot of the other things, can take ages.
In that case, if we're having a working group, can we have a working group that is focused on achievable? And I do appreciate having a new bridge would be great, and I appreciate having closing it off to traffic, again, would be great, but that's years. Something that can happen quickly. Sorry.
Of course, the idea of just having a phased approach is perfectly fine in the interim.
Yes.
But
Having
longer
something
term,
as soon as possible. Councillor Anderson?
I mean, you didn't mention the other option which I thought was feasible from that report, and that is taking the pavement away from one side and
And losing it there.
We did discuss that, we did, we
Yeah.
did discuss that.
which I think.
But that's
I mean, it would be disruptive, but it would.
It would be a good idea.
Yes, but that's as we're sort of saying, achievable in the short term.
We have to prioritise what we need to do, I think we
Yes.
need to prioritise the signage.
So just going through, do we have some names for working group?
It went back into discussion,
Yes.
so I haven't noted anything.
No, noted. So show of hands for working group. I'm happy to.
Can we also send an invitation to Councillor Green as well, because obviously you've done the report?
Yes, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just ask, though, on the working groups, council back members in terms of standing orders, I will refer to there, because we can't just,
No, I appreciate
Create
that.
a working
That was
group.
going to be my next
it has to
thing.
have a terms of reference.
Yes.
Working groups should only exist for up to 6 months. And I can't remember whether it needs to go to West, and I'm just looking for the standing orders now.
I can't remember whether this committee is empowered.
Yeah,
I think committees are empowered to set up working groups.
Report back to the committee.
So can we propose this working group?
Yeah.
We can then go forward and say, how do we actually formally create this as a working group?
Okay, can
Yes.
I'll try and have a look at standing orders, but I think that committees like this are empowered to create working groups. They need to obviously do terms of reference, and obviously there's a time period, but if we haven't come forward with after 6 months, I would think as a committee, as a working group, we perhaps have missed the goal.
How about, I put it forward as a town team project, and you all join in and we produce a document from this group without going through all this. So
That
we
would be
just say, I mean, it doesn't really matter who chairs it because you're a councillor on the town team.
Yeah.
But we could say, this is a working group set up by the town team to come up with 5 options for the toll bridge that could then come back and be submitted back to this committee. And it solves all the problem of and the time.
My concern will be if there's already been a report made out with 5 possible options. So, and if it, I do feel that it may, no offence to the town team, I do feel that it go round in circles and then just get lost in the wind. So I do feel that if we're going to actually start to do it now, obviously KCC elections are coming up, so we're going to have probably a new highways guy from KCC that we need to discuss after May. So I do feel that we need to do something. Town team, I'm more happy to help with the town team and speak to them, but I do feel that it will get lost in the wind and it will just be going around in circles all the time.
And I'd be very cautious of having 5 options when we've sort of fined it down to
2 or 3.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, that was an example of
yes.
the ideas we discussed. It doesn't really matter.
That's a very good option, but I do feel that we need to move this forward as a council.
Yeah, I think the council working group. So if we can explore, we've got some names, setting up a working group, that it is how we go through, and obviously we need terms of reference, we need to actually understand quite what we actually are discussing, what the point of the working group is. Because it's all very well sort of saying it's the toll bridge and we're going to help you with this solution.
Right.
And if it comes underneath this group, you'll then be waiting till May to discuss the terms of reference for your working group.
Fair enough, but at least we've moved on a little bit.
Well, we can discuss that in May, but we can do a lot before May.
Yes.
Without.
Yes, but I think in the meantime, as soon as Sir Roger Gale is able to,
Yeah.
because I think we have a fairly good way forward, but at least have him on site looking at it. Otherwise, nothing will happen.
And I'm sure the 6 months rule starts when the terms of reference have been agreed, is it correct?
No, but it's not quite as precise as that. When the group comes together, it's doable. it's not going to take forever and a day to write terms of reference. We're basically looking at restricted number of options, because we're not going to be looking at things like building a new bridge.
No.
Okay. You've got that, and you've got particular kinds of vehicle, which are the problem. That's what we've been discussing. Keep it to that, because we're not talking about private cars and so on. That's not an issue. The real issue is any articulated delivery vehicles which can legally come into the town, and PSVs. And that's all you need to look at, public service vehicles, PSVs.
Coaches,
I think there is actually
public
more
service
than that.
vehicles.
Does that include coaches?
That is coaches,
Yes,
public
yes.
service vehicles are buses and coaches.
I think the other problem is that the pavements are too narrow for people
Yes.
using mobility.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is the problem.
But
And surely
So
that
it's
is
more-
part of defining what the point of the working group is, what we're trying to achieve, which to my mind is, are we trying to restrict traffic to save the toll bridge? Because that's one of the issues. Are we trying to make it safe for people to cross whenever they like, or in particular times? And I think that the working group has so many things to find down.
I do think that if we have timed pedestrian crossing, then that obviates perhaps the necessity for just a wider pavement, because people could use the middle of the road, couldn't
Yes,
they,
they
if they
could,
need to?
yeah.
So,
I think that would be
Right, if we can move on from this one, I
So
think.
just to clarify, the action to
Yes.
that was to continue with the invitation to
Continue.
George Gale, but obviously amended to,
At his convenience.
okay. And to investigate and get all the information you need to do work.
Yes, to understand how to set it up.
And make it an agenda.
Are we happy with that?
are we going to actually start the working group before any of this, so we can sort of get on with?
Well, we can certainly talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure we can certainly, councils can meet up and have discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Informal
makes a
discussion.
lot of sense, because
Yes.
that's the only way to move things forward, otherwise we're constantly, aren't we, sitting on,
So Carol, when's the next council meeting?
Monday.
Oh, sadly I'm not here, so,
Oh, is it?
It would be time to get a face together for Monday.
so
It's
yeah,
10:30 on Monday.
maybe a small informal discussion can be made Monday.
Right, moving on. Terms of reference for Heritage Townscape. I think we're complete on that, aren't we?
We are.
Yes.
I've got a report about the tourism forum's view, but that's later on in the agenda.
Now, if we're complete here, can we remove this completely? Which would be actually quite good to actually remove an action point. Yeah, we've done something. I know it's sort of introspective, but Heritage and Townscape member projects such as community transport, bike racks, street furniture, slowways. Do we have anything? I think there's some
I hope
green.
you don't mind,
Yes.
that in the action number, just temporarily until we start, they were all individual, but I've merged them, otherwise I
Yes.
think it was getting quite lengthy a document.
Yeah, no, happy with that. Yeah. And do we have anything to add to that, Councillor Chuka?
So on the street furniture or the town trail project, I've been engaging with DDC, their maintenance inspector, actually making some good progress. I've had a response to a set of work I did and played across to him. He's responded to me earlier this week. And basically they are going to support us in a number of shapes and forms in terms of any project we do run along the town trail. So including, for example, one of the things that we can do potentially is repaint some of the benches, subject to, for example, some may well be memorial benches, there will be issues there that need to be investigated. But what he is going to do is engage with brewers, the decorators, and come up with, in his words, a painting spec for us to use. So that's the level of support we're getting, rather than saying you can do this, you can't do that. Actually, he's going the extra step to support us. He's going to provide some road pins, some barrier tapes when we do any actual maintenance work, to cordon off areas, etc. So actually he's quite engaged with us on this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a further meeting with him week after next to go through his response to me in terms of what I played across to him. So, I mean, this is going to be a late spring, early summer start, I think, it will take an amount of time. We won't be touching lampposts, but I always knew we wouldn't, because you could only paint them so high. But however, they have put it on their schedule to do, so I don't know when, but they will be maintaining lampposts, which is one thing they haven't been doing for a long period of time.
So at some point we'll be calling for volunteers. Councillor Marie?
Yeah, just quickly on parking and speeding. So I'm not. It was my project, but I stood down due to work commitments. Just to point out that there was 2 weeks ago there was a near miss outside Sandwich Junior School where a car mounted pavement drove across the pavement and he took a couple of children out. So I contacted DDC Parking Services and the police as well, so for them to send a unit down there for the next day because there was cars known to be parking on the yellow zigzags. I'm not sure about the DDC Parking Services. I haven't seen a traffic warden in this town for 3 weeks. Over 3 weeks. I know that because my car's not getting a ticket on the key at the moment, which is good for me. The only other thing is, this is speeding. I know that PC Lauren's been doing a lot of speed watches around the town, around the outskirts of the town, and has clocked a couple of people and obviously done it for other things like no insurance. That's all I can give you for that moment. Yeah. Also, we had a discussion when we was looking at Ainsley Court about the 2 parking bays for the ease of access to go to Love Lane. So that could be put on part of that parking thing about moving those, and as Carol said, moving those to the 2 doctor's surgery parking bays.
So,
Been saying that for you.
sorry, just expand on the bit to put on here again.
Ainsley Court to the 2 parking bays opposite Ainsley Court for Love Lane. We spoke about it, didn't we? About moving them for ease of access to get to Love Lane.
Can we leave that until the disability?
Yeah. I've got to leave in 15 minutes because I'm going in the curfew break.
Okay, I think we are at the end of the action list. If we can go back to the agenda. Right. And the next one, disability access strategy. So, Councillor Anderson, do you have any comments? Oh, public. We go through that and then it's public participation. Thank you very much. Item number 6. Thought we'd had that already. A 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the town clerk at least 4 hours in advance of the meeting. I don't believe do we have any?
We did not have
any requests? No. But I do read that out so that anybody listening in on the video is also aware if they wish to join in with public participation. Number 7, disability access strategy. Members to consider how access across Sandwich can be improved for disabled and less mobile members of the community and visitors. And Councillor Anderson, do you have any comments?
We've got 2,500 in the budget, and I asked last year if we could, I think it was last year, at the end of last year, if we could spend that money on getting around at Ainsley Court, and also perhaps building a balustrade along the boundary of Fellowship Walk, which is steep. And I was told that there would be no officer support, so I don't have time or the human capital to do that work, so I haven't done it. And I think it's sad and disappointing, and that's been minuted from the last meeting that we had, and I don't think there's any further comment.
No. You might have to pass this on to town clerk, but in terms of no officer support, in the event that a councillor was willing to take on the work, the actions associated with this, is there then a restriction in terms of the spending of the money? And you might want to refer that back to Jill.
don't believe so, but I think because the funding is there for the committee to decide, so if, as long as the committee is in agreement, I don't think the administration behind it matters.
Right, so if an individual member of the committee was to approach Ainsley Court, and Ainsley, and a potential, I presume you might need 3 quotes, I don't know, potential builder, to actually get to the point where we can say, here's the money, make it happen, that there's not a barrier that we then have to cross.
I think as well as this financial barrier and then the officer support issue, there was also in terms of land and legalities, and so I don't think it was just as simple as having somebody available
yes.
to find quotes. But
Yeah.
if there was a council member that wished to support the project, then
Yes,
there's nothing
and
wrong.
I appreciate liability. It's because where I'm getting at is the money would go essentially to do something on Ainsley Court's land, where we were able to leave the liability with Ainsley Court, and essentially we're putting a ramp in. I'm not really sure how the liability works.
We're just funding them to
Yes.
do it in effect.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it?
And that's why whoever it is will be needing to investigate and make sure everything was done legitimately.
Yes.
There is a responsibility if you install something that sits with you unless you're able to transfer it to
Yes,
a party, and
Yes.
how you do that would probably have a legal background in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Which is all the bits that somebody needs to project.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's that last.
There's always
bit.
barriers, isn't there, to doing
Yes.
anything. You can't just do stuff. Everything is barriers, timescales, time,
Yes.
all the rest of it is just so frustrating.
Yeah.
Do you not think we should at least actually speak to the Ainsley Court and find out how they feel about?
Well, we know how
Yeah.
they feel, Carol, they've written
Yeah,
twice
I
to say
know
that
how
they're
we,
keen on it.
I know that, but I don't think we've explored with them the idea of somehow raising some money for them to do it. I don't think we've ever had that conversation with them. And maybe this is the conversation that does need to be had to even move this forward now, because we know, I think now that the councillors have all seen exactly how that really works, it's an obvious solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the sticking point is, as Councillor Sticker is saying, and so on, where the responsibility ends up. So if I mean, it may be that the money can't come from the council, but it can come from some other source to, money raised to do this from some other source. I think, didn't someone suggest the co-op? Applying to the co-op money, from co-op money funding, so that but if it will Ainsley Court be willing to take that on? I think that's the first question that we need to find.
The other thing I was concerned about is Ainsley Court if they haven't been already, need to be aware of their liability. As Councillor Tucker said, are they aware that they've got to do this? Are they aware they've got to do it? Planning permission, pay for the planning permission, etc., etc. That's the other thing that needs to be aware of.
So in 2 years' time, if it's a wooden, for example, and it's rotten, and somebody has an accident, who's responsible? So it's all those things you have to future-proof any solution.
I think when we looked at it today, I don't think anyone was thinking about something that was quite as temporary as that. I think they were thinking it had to be a proper built concrete ramp,
Yes.
which would then, how much would that cost, and would they be prepared to do it, especially if we explain the situation that we were in. They were very helpful previously, so maybe that's the answer first. We somehow engage with Ainsley Court to find out what their view is now.
Would you be able to pass on a contact, or should we contact?
Well, Chloe, has it?
Yes.
Because you wrote,
I think we're.
That was some time ago, but
Yes.
I had that.
Would you want to join in any meeting?
No,
No, I do appreciate that. I think Yeah, I do get it, so, maybe if the two of us, I don't know, Lynn, would you join us? Just have a very informal meeting, very informal, just to sort of go through to the point where we understand each other, but bearing in mind all the other technical elements, the administrative elements. Right, anything else on the disability access strategy?
Well, the other aspect is that the balustrade down Fellowship Walk, which I think
Yes.
would make a difference to people. I mean, I've been down that slope on a mobility scooter. I don't know whether I could confirm. I mean, it's a bit scary, but it's even worse for somebody who's got mobility problems and is not on a mobility scooter because it's really steep. And there is a Sandwich resident who is, unable to get down that slope.
Yes.
Because there is nothing to hold on to.
And how do we go forward with this in terms of opposite
If I
time?
remember, I don't know if it was raised last time that a report come from yourself to the committee to talk about it and discuss it.
No, I was just told that there would be obviously I asked about it and was told there would be no.
That doesn't mean the project has to stop. It just meant that I wouldn't have the available time to do the administration that comes with that project. If it's something you're passionate about, you want to push forward.
Well,
please do.
yes, I don't think I'm going to be on this committee much longer, so it's not a very great committee.
Maybe we can look at it, maybe we can look at it next agenda.
Because the next book will be the essentially a new committee, won't we? Because we'll have been
Yes.
through
Yeah.
there, maybe.
Well, new leadership, so you have to go
Yes.
through the
Nominate again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we have that as an agenda item for the next one? I know it's pushing it back, but rather have decisions. Well,
So the next meeting, just looked at, is the 21st of May.
yeah, and the mayor making is April, isn't it?
May.
May.
15th.
15th.
Yeah,
Right. So if we actually have that as an agenda item,
the balustrade.
the balustrade.
Yes.
The balustrade as an agenda item, the ramp, I think we can continue discussing it, we can continue pushing, but I don't want it as an agenda item
Okay, that's fine.
because we'll be saying the same things.
And I think that's my observation, Simon, is I think we move from the we to the I. So if there is somebody within this committee or whoever's in the next
Yeah.
chair of this committee as a councillor who's willing to say, I will take that project on, that's what needs to happen. Someone
Yes.
goes away and does all the things that needs to be done
Yeah.
with help, but not leading it by the
No.
officers, but with where there are points at which we need to engage officers, then that has to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, balustrade as an agenda item, I think, Ainsley Court on the back burner, so to speak.
Sorry, Simon, I have to leave. Can I just make a point for the last
Yes,
item
of
on the
course.
agenda, just quickly? So, myself and the District Commissioner for Sandwich and Ash Scouts have organised a St George's Day parade from the Guildhall to St Mary's Arts Centre on the Sunday the 27th of April. All councillors are welcome to attend. I can't say that on Monday because I'm not here, so just wanted to make that comment for the minutes for this committee tonight. Sunday the 27th of April.
Councillor Marie, I'm chairing STC. If you want me to mention that, drop
Oh,
me an
okay,
email
yeah,
and
okay.
I'll mention it in the
Okay.
opening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tudor. I'm off now, sorry.
Right, thank you. If we can move on from disability access strategy to tourism, item 8, tourism, verbal update from the tourism forum.
Thank you. Right. The tourism forum, we looked at both the terms of reference here and also Sandwich Town Council's older paper on the former tourism committee. Please, anyone, any other councillors who are there, please chip in if I haven't got this quite right. First of all, the forum was quite clear. They do not want a bureaucratic council committee. That was absolutely clear. No, we don't want a tourism committee as before. They would like to have a fairly loose relationship with the town council because this is something that they believe they can work much faster and much more effectively if they're not tied up with the inevitable rules and regulations that the council would have for its own programme. They would like to keep continuing to use the Guildhall as a venue for their meetings, which the council has very kindly provided. They are prepared to share the notes of the tourism forum meetings, but they are not prepared to do a special report for the town council. Those were the key items that came out from that, and there's two additional parts. Unfortunately, the forum do not believe that STC is doing very much to support tourism at the moment. And if we look at our own terms of reference, a major source for promoting and publicising, dissemination of event information and running tourist information facilities. I suggest that very little, if any, of that is occurring at the moment. From the Tourism Forum's perspective, there are two major issues that do need to be resolved. They're not simple. We do need to sort out what is happening with the Visitor Information Centre. I understand that was being discussed on Monday, but we really need to get something moving. I don't know what the answer is, but it is a delicate issue. But this inertia has gone on for too long now. We really need to get some action. I'm quite happy to be involved in any ways of trying to address the issue. It isn't just the location that we're concerned about, it's what they actually do. Because a lot of things now are very much using QR codes and so on, so that people can come in to a venue and rapidly get the information. It is not the same as saying that people have to provide that information. And I think this is a major issue that needs to be addressed by whichever group finds it, because there's a lot of disinformation being going around in the past about it. The second thing that the Tourism Forum are particularly concerned about is the website. This could potentially be a very powerful tool for tourism. Again, it doesn't have to do everything if it can be something that visitors can hook onto and then be rapidly directed to more relevant parts. And this is something that has to happen now. I've got a meeting arranged with the town clerk when she returns from her break to understand just what her vision for the website is, and I think that's the starting point, because if her vision is completely different, then we need to know about it and think again. So that's a very brief report. I do invite other councillors who are at the meeting to correct me if I was wrong.
Sorry, can I just clarify, when you said there was going to be a discussion at the STC meeting regarding the tourist information?
I understand it blew up on Monday. With a vengeance.
STBF it was mentioned.
Oh, STBF.
Sorry, yes.
So it's not being discussed on Monday, but in terms of how it was presented on Monday gone, was that the suggestion I interpreted was that there are two parties, two factions, I would say, who are going to write their view of the way forward, and then we as a council are going to come together to discuss those options. I haven't seen anything, certainly won't be next Monday,
No.
and I have my own personal view which doesn't necessarily support that as the right way, but I'm only one person out of 16. I think unfortunately it does need a more structured approach where we get the right players together. I hate saying the working group, but we have to deal with this particular problem. It is in the business plan.
Yes.
That's something to tackle. So it does need to be tackled in the next year to two. But there are some very strong opinions on both sides.
Yes, I'm well aware of that, and that's why I'm saying that there has been disinformation, deliberate disinformation about this. It needs to be addressed. I'm quite happy to be on any group that is involved in this, but I don't know what the answers are, and I'm not proposing any single solution because it is complicated.
You might not even have any knowledge of any of this.
I think there was a conversation, and I understand there has been a lot of history in relation to the tourist information and where it should and should not be, and how it should and should not be run. So that's a surprise.
My preference is it would come to this committee in the next year as one of its primary issues to address over that year, and engage the right people in a measured manner.
Might I also say, Carol, you were there as well, and welcome contribution from yourself if I got it anything wrong.
No, you haven't got anything wrong. I think that was a really good review of what was said, and I think the tourist information centre issue was definitely one that has been there for a long time, and it needs to be resolved one way or another. And the website obviously was the other. Well, in a way, I think they probably go almost hand in hand. So yeah, but may I just say that with respect to tourism, and I don't know whether you were going to come on to it, but we had the tourist networking yesterday, which I thought was very successful. It was a good opening gambit for to start things off. I'm not totally convinced that maybe the right speakers were there, especially about sustainability, because I didn't really get that at all. But anyway, I think they came to Sandwich and they did it in Sandwich, and that was positive. We picked up quite a few people afterwards who came and spoke to us, some of the officers from DDC who were particularly interested in what we were doing, especially the Compass Rose and the elephant, I have to say, which has come back on the agenda. And also some of those officers who were sort of listening to things like, how do we progress tourism in Sandwich, and can individual people certainly at DDC help in any way. I had a meeting today with one of the officers about grant applications and how difficult some of these are when you're trying to just maintain the status quo, because you can't keep opening new projects if you don't know how you're going to sustain them long term. And I think that was quite an interesting discussion there. But I thought, as an opening gambit, it was a good idea. Maybe a suggestion next time, if they're coming our way, to of some of the things that we might like to hear from the officers or the speakers.
I can certainly feed that back. Perhaps you and I have a brief meeting and make a conference of it. Could I just also say that other very useful people I spoke to Blue Badge Guns, and it was no holds barred description of what Sandwich does and does not do for tourism. And that's very important. These are people who are working in this day in and day out with the kind of market we're trying to attract. So I'm going to try to set up a meeting with them and really, suck as much information out as we can. And some of it won't be warts and all. We need to be aware of that. We have problems. We've got some good things as well, and they were still very enthusiastic about that. But they do this for a living.
Is it worth having? Sorry, Councillor Morehouse.
Yes, going back to yesterday's networking event, didn't see the relevance on sustainability. I didn't see the relevance on the climate change aspects either. What was most disappointing was the fact that the commercial director of Visit Kent sent apologies for whatever reason, I don't know, and there was no substitute sent, and I think that would have been a pretty important person to have at that.
We have had issues. I know the chair of the forum has been trying to contact the person to get this person to attend, and he has had issues for a while. For some reason, it's very hard to contact this person.
Councillor Ribbett.
Just to mention though, to recount to some of these comments, I totally agree about some of the speeches that were. I did think Chris Townend gave a very helpful speech. The first one about DDC and what they could offer, in particular I took up a lot in terms of the Heritage Open Days and the help that DDC could give with those. So there was a lot of good stuff there as well.
Yeah, he came over and spoken with John as well, and he's taken away. I bought that here, so you can have a copy of it. The new idea for the elephant. It's here. Perhaps I can give it to Simon because it now seems to be doing the rounds in a lot of different directions. It's this is the metal.
I'll share the picture.
This is
the metal
Elephant Mark II.
Can I show you?
Yeah, of course.
Those who are on watching from a distance. I think it's important.
And just to mention that this elephant, if we get it, is made in Kenya. And is very helpful in supporting.
So this is the elephant that we're...
That's a pic. That is a photograph of a drawing that was made at the time in 1254 of the elephant.
1254.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there is the paper actually. Richard Ralph put that paper together so that we had something to hand out to certain people yesterday, because although this elephant is made from sustainable and it's metal, it's a metal elephant. It's all old used metal, reclaimed metal. It would come from Kenya. It's made by in a village that is funded specifically to make items for sale to keep the village going. So there's quite a good link there, which
option for a twinning there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Elephant looks like.
Yes.
And they make it, and it's a full size elephant. Make it and ship it and install it for about £6,000,
Right.
which I think also caught the imagination of DDC. So there's still a bit to go through. Oh, well, there's a lot to go through, but at least we've got it back on the agenda, because as a tourist attraction, I think people thought it did, and it also captured the imagination of people, like, you know, the schools. Could they make elephants out of reclaimed materials, and could they join in and perhaps have a procession of elephants and really make it a tourist attraction? So it was joining up different factions. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. It could be the elephant in the room.
Could be.
As long as it's not my
Could be procession at Diwali or Festival of Light at Christmas.
Oh, yes.
Or a Roman triumph.
Yeah. Anything else? I'm sure there's lots on tourism, but anything else that's relevant to raise with regard to the tourism committee, which isn't good? In that case, I'll have to move on to option 9, Day 80, updating discussion on activities and events to mark VE Day 80. If I can start off on this, and then any welcome comments and thoughts. Now, I'm wearing my just momentarily my Sandwich Salutes hat. I'll sort of pass these round. These are Sandwich Salutes because we are having the same made up with this logo. Now, the idea being that Sandwich Salutes does its thing in its own way. The Town Council has its own, this is the Town Council's brochure, which has gone to, I hope, all the traders in Sandwich in advance, saying this is what we're doing. We have a separate Sandwich Salutes brochure on the back, and again trying to distinguish between the two, because obviously that one is a private voluntary organisation, one is the Sandwich Town Council organisation. Basically to give sort of traders an idea of what is going to happen. With regard to the pin badges, which will be logoed Sandwich celebrates, and we're differentiating between salutes and celebrates because we're celebrating VE Day rather than saluting anything. One of the ideas which has been accepted is that we give one of these free to each of the junior school children, and they've invited me in to give a little talk. 240 of these are going to the junior school. And the headmaster said initially it was for the 6th of May, and I said, I can't do the 6th of May because I'm going to be telling them about, of course, sandwich salutes, and saying, you can't come because it's been and gone. So we're doing it on the 29th of April. So a little talk. Now, the difficulty then is, what do you talk about? So what I'm going to talk about, it's just only 20 minutes, is about memory, about remembering and how to pass down those. I don't want to talk about the war, though it's VE Day, the VE Day is how you remember something and how you celebrate something. So that will be the point of the meeting. Going on from there and what we're having, what is planned, while it's got Anderson Shelter to be confirmed, I have confirmed it. We're having an Anderson Shelter display on the forecourt. We are having the searchlight. So basically, as you can see from the schedule on the front of this, we raise the flag at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then things start happening on the forecourt from 6 o'clock, because obviously we've got the market. And hopefully the market will be a little bit sort of slanted towards 1940s. Yeah, who knows? So from 6 o'clock, we have the Anderson Shelter display that will be being set up. The bells, this is the bell ringers, the curfew bell ringers, will be ringing from 6:30 all the way through to 7 o'clock, taking it in turns, otherwise their arms will get a bit hurt. 7 o'clock we have Lulu Swings, which is a sort of 1940s act, but it's the double bass, we've got Lulu who sings, and a guitar, and it's a very easy going, sort of bluesy 1940s, but it's not the standard night. It's a bit more varied, it's a bit more relaxed. Then we have a military bar. This is the same bar that we have at Sandwich Salutes, but I've put in a TENS application. So David Batchelor is basically doing the main organising, we're setting up, so that will be going ahead. So basically it's so that there is something to look at, that's the searchlight set up and the Anderson Shelter display. There is something to do, which is go and buy a drink. I've spoken to the sandwich shop, they will be open so you can buy tea as well. Maybe they will do something like spam sandwiches, but it'll be fun. Having the searchlight, it will be absolutely unique. Yeah, so the next stage is to start pushing that uniqueness. Now the challenge then is, do we want, realistically this is for sandwich, I don't want to push it too much beyond sandwich. I want to be able to say, look what we did, rather than come, I don't want thousands and thousands of people coming to see a searchlight. That would just be, it just wouldn't work. So, so if it's, I want sandwich to know, don't want to tell anybody else really, much. As long as sandwich turns up. So we're looking at something like 500 people, that's what the TENS license allows for. Any more than that, go away. Well, the thing is, we can't stop them, but it should work brilliantly. We also have the Leave to Land exhibition, which will be on display in the courtroom. I'm speaking to Karen tomorrow to start the process of actually getting them printed, because while the Leave to Land exhibition came back in January of last year, we borrowed it. This time we're going to have our own copy. Now, looking at the definition and the actual file sent, we're basically having one of the panels printed to make sure it works at the definition and the price that we're looking at. Because we can't go, if we can spend £1,000, we can spend 250. We're keeping it a good, as the French say, quality prix, so the balance of price and quality. Claire is very kindly doing a talk on the 6th in the jury room, that's it, on the 4,000. So while the leave to land is about the camp and the process of getting there, you're about the people. I think that's how to best to describe it.
Yes.
The actual
That's right,
people.
Well,
Yeah.
well, the history of why they came here.
Yeah.
But also I should say that obviously I'll try and talk a bit about immediate post-war.
Oh, yes.
And of course that's not a terribly happy story.
No.
I mean that's the problem. But
Right.
because that was when people discovered that actually they'd lost their entire families.
Yeah.
But well, I'll try and make it reflect that others have got away.
Yes. I think the reflection is, there was a point where we actually fought for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah, for a very important reason there.
Mm.
Anything else we will have for the Sandwich Celebrates? 240 goes to the kids. There will be 160 roughly left over. I'll be proposing to sell these through the bar at £2, thereabouts. That goes, I'm not sure where the money goes back into. And equally with the bar, I'm proposing that that's split between events, medical trust, because that's what we do. With Sandwich Goods, it's split between Sandwich Goods and medical trust. For the day, from 6 o'clock, we will need stewards. So I will be asking again in the main committee meeting, the town council meeting, for volunteer stewards. That's so. Over to you. Any other comments about it from anybody?
Sorry, can I make a
Yes.
comment that
Yes.
your leaflet, that spoken to a couple of shopkeepers who just happened to mention it, and they were delighted that for once they were kept informed, and it looked like a good programme.
Brilliant,
So,
brilliant. Because
that's
they
all.
had one the same last year.
I don't know,
Yes.
but I had two people who said it was very good.
I specifically asked the Sandwich Compass people on the tourism forum to actually keep making sure that people are aware of this sort of thing and the meeting. And they reassured me that they were. Again, I'm going to have a meeting with them to talk about how do we get better communications with the Compass people, because there are some gaps. They have problems as well, because if you're the only person in a premises, you can't necessarily take time off to do other things during the working period. So I will set up a meeting with them and hopefully make sure that we've got a better line of communication than we have sometimes had in the past.
On the communications, what's planned in terms of particularly the Sandwich Town element, in terms of advertising? Also, a website, there's nothing on there at the moment.
There is.
Is there?
Created
yes.
a poster.
Recently?
Yeah.
Recently.
A good week or so ago.
Okay, apologies then.
It
That's
just
good.
doesn't look like this leaflet.
Ah,
It's a separate
right, okay.
poster.
Yeah, so just on the
that is
announcement.
just for.
Okay, it's just showing how we get the profile of the app. So, for example, simple things like banners, etc. So, if you had a banner at the front on the forecourt at the top, if for the 4 or 5 weeks beforehand, 3 or 4 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, or whatever it is, advertise. Because the complaint that always comes out is, I didn't know anything about it.
So if I could just say before Councillor Anderson, unless you want to.
Well, I was just going to comment on the leaflet that we've got the date of the VE Day very prominent, but we haven't got the date of Sandwich Goods the 40s. I think that should be very prominent.
Ah, right. This just went to the,
Yes, but it would be
that's a
very
good
helpful,
point,
and
yes.
where you've got in red, draft, I would put the dates in.
yes. This actually was just for the traders. so
Yes, but it's
yeah.
still,
it
should be helpful.
For the promotion to the public, I'm working on an 8-page, that's an A5 leaflet, which will go to, it's basically 2 A4 sheets, which will print about 2,000 or so, and they go out in the same way as these went out last year, but because last year it was just Sandwich salutes. Now, because there's so much going on, including, I forgot, the Port and Haven is invited the Dunkirk veterans to stay over in the harbour. Things keep on coming. But the 8th page will have things like that, plus the dates, and a little bit more about what things are, like what the searchlight was, what the leave to land is, just with pictures as well, because there's enough room for that. But I will be circulating it beforehand, so you'll see that on the council.
Yeah, back to my point. I found it now, but I've had to drill down. So the whole point, this is probably the town council's big event for the next 12 months. It should be on the landing page on the website, not by drilling down. When you drill down, it's just a one-liner. So this isn't criticism. I'm
No,
saying we need
that's
to improve how we communicate. It should be on the front page because we've got latest news. It should be on there. Sandwich Town Council is hosting the VE Day 8 event. It needs to be really shouted out. Because if not, we're investing £3,000 of residents' money into this event. It would be very disappointing if afterwards people say, I never knew about it.
It is also going in the newsletter, which is the
Yes, of course,
so
that's
that
vehicle.
would be, but I can move that to the front.
Yeah.
And in Sandwich Advertiser. So they've got a big article going in. Well, I hope they're printed. Yeah, they've done it, they didn't. Anything else on VE Day? Yeah.
Sounds very good.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Number 10, matters raised by co-opted member Keith Heaven. This is basically from the items for information matters to discuss the next time. If I can just read out this, and I'll just pass over to Keith. Keith Heaven has raised the following discussion, initially to note individually, pending any further discussion or inclusion as an agenda item for action in subsequent meetings. Pesticide use by contractors in the town. Are we pesticide free? I must admit I don't know. Waterways, when is the desilting due to start? What effect will this have on the donkey paddock? Will mud be deposited on that site? The trees in Manwood Road site, I presume that's the recent destruction of trees in advance of the planning application.
Is it St George's Road?
That's, yes, St George's Road. Yeah, so it was those trees. Yeah, so trees on St George's Road site. So over to you, Keith.
Yeah, it's really just a request for update information that others might know about. In practical terms, the donkey paddock issue is quite important because Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group has already started the year's work on the donkey paddock, but we can't proceed a great deal until we know when and if there's going to be desilting activities and mud deposited on the site, which we accept will have to be done. Is it going to happen? And will they be depositing mud on the donkey paddock? The pesticide issue, again, we know that the council, I may have even been on the council there, voted to be pesticide free in its functions, but we don't really know whether it is and how it can be checked on. And the other issue, of course, is that I call them the Manwood trees, okay, St George's trees, which were cut down by the landowners in advance of a planning application, and that planning application has now been rejected, to what extent does this council, or indeed Dover District Council, have the powers to oblige the planning applicants to reinstate those trees, bearing in mind that obviously there's a provision if you destroy trees for a successful planning application, you can then make promises to get your planning application successful, to replant trees and do all kinds of wonderful things. And what happens when that planning application loses, but the trees have already been destroyed? Is there scope to oblige the applicant to replant?
That planning application went to council in spring last year. It was rejected by the planning committee. And then in the summer, it was referred to the planning inspector. And the planning inspector came back January to uphold the decision made by the planning committee. But it does beg the question that no planning application, or nobody should be doing any preemptive work until a planning application has been approved. But there was a recent matter with disputed land between Smockville Lane and St Bart's Road, where a land grab and DDC enforcement will not do anything about it. And it's the same with Fellowship Walk. As you know.
There's a threshold that they seem to be applying that's not set very high in terms of deciding not to take any action.
Why have planning enforcement if you're not going to enforce planning rules?
Sorry, is that, can I just ask, is that because those trees had, were listed as
TPA.
registered trees? Because I'm in conversation with DDC about Fellowship Way, and, you know, one of the answers, I've gone back to them, but one of their answers is, well, the trees weren't registered as, so if they're not registered in a way, they can, well, you should really apply, but that's why they haven't gone back on it, because they found out that the trees weren't registered trees. So it was a let out, if you like, just their answer.
I understood that when the planning application for St George's Road was put in, a very quick application to the council was made to get tree preservation orders placed on them. And even though that is a slow process, the implication, I thought legally, was that while the decision is being awaited on a tree preservation order, they shouldn't be cut down. But again, taking the point that if Dover District Council doesn't wish to enforce or to use its existing powers that it's got to enforce matters, then how would you persuade Dover District Council to enforce its own regulations?
I've got an answer on the first two, because I went to DDC about them. So I'm not aware that we, as a town council, have pesticides used in the circumstances, but I'm happy to be corrected. So, Dover District Council, their answer is, we are not completely pesticide free. There have been numerous FOIs on this matter over the past couple of years, but there is not a viable alternative to chemical usage at present. We assisted in some trials with KCC on this topic, where various methods were explored, such as hot foam, burning and hand removal, but none of these were financially viable options. Unfortunately, weeds need to be controlled, as they can end up causing damage to structures or can become trip and slip hazards if unattended. This is the outcome from Brighton and Hove City Council when they removed all chemical weeds control, but reinstated this when facing significant repair bills and insurance claims. So back facts are out on that.
Mhm.
Okay. And on the second one regards waterworks, they're underway, continuing to present complications that this is the DDC and their contractors are overcoming. The dredging and water vole mitigation works are being programmed at the end of September, beginning of October, but they are awaiting quotations for the works. There is still an intention to deposit silt on the donkey paddock, and this is a long-term commitment to. If the paddock is unavailable in the future, then the desilting works would be put in jeopardy as the cost would be prohibitive to remove the silt off-site.
That's what we expected, and we do expect them to put silt on at least part of the.
Yes, I was there when, we had an officer from BBC talking about it. Yeah. So that's the latest, that's
Okay,
from yesterday.
okay, great.
They wouldn't let us use pesticide on the quay when Roger Ragg was in control of that area, because we couldn't keep the weeds away from the edge of the actual quay itself, and they told us that we shouldn't be pulling them out because that just spread them even further. And they suggested we use boiling water to. Where we were going to get that from, I don't know. But,
Flamethrowers.
Yeah. But definitely no pesticides were allowed to be used. That was 2 years ago. Because they said that was their policy. Yeah,
This is 24 hours ago. It may well be a policy, but
yeah, but
not
this
all
can't.
the
Yeah.
Right. Anything else on that particular?
Sorry, can I?
Yes, of course.
Can I just ask? Does that mean that if they're not doing the silt thing, are they still going ahead and doing something with the bridge? Because
oh no, that's the project.
that
That project is underway.
Yeah.
It's a 4-week span, I believe, for the contractors to complete work.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was dependent on water voles and other things.
Yeah,
before.
I mean, this is more of a broader point
Yeah.
about water voles. Yeah. They've done what needs to be done in terms of mitigation actions for the water voles for that project.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And anything else on item 10? Anybody? Right, if we can just move on to item, straight through to item 13.
I can tell this
11 and 12 cemetery. Yeah, no, don't think we need to worry. They never were there. Yes, basically items for information only, matters for the May 2025 meeting, an opportunity for members to request matters for future Heritage and Townscape Committee meetings and share information.
Well, we've asked about trees.
Yeah, so trees is going to go on as an agenda item for, and otherwise, well, I'm sure if things come up during the period.
And we also had a rail for the handrail.
Yes,
That was
handrail.
a separate
Yes.
And climate change.
Yeah.
And the elephant.
Climate change.
And was climate change and trees not in the same agenda item?
I think it possibly
Or do you want
should be
it separate?
Can we keep it separate?
Yes. And number 14, date and
Can
time.
Oh yes.
Would
You
you
might
like
have
us
some more
to-
information there.
Yes, and the elephant, and do we want as an agenda item, the elephant?
Yes, if we,
Yes,
and I can, if we haven't got any further by then, we
yes.
can scrap it. I can
Well,
say-
it might well be, if it's something that's going to be ongoing for a while,
Yeah.
that goes on as a...
Well, should we just see where we get to?
Yes, yes, let's have that as an agenda item. Number 14, date and time of next meeting, 21st of May 2025, and if we can say that is the end of the meeting.
Yes, because I'll be in the meeting.
There will be.
Yeah.